I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Is it another mystery of the church? We go to St. Patrick's Cathedral to check out some Hitchcock. They're all over Brooklyn and Queens. Bishop DiMarzio discusses ecclesial movements in the Brooklyn Diocese.
The involvement that there is much more intense, much more productive for the lay people that are taking their faith seriously, because they are taking responsibility.
And could expectant mothers ever have expected their very own app? Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Francesca Maxime has the night off. The news has many in the church on edge, wondering what comes next. Each day, news stories emerge about sexual abuse by priests. Though much of it happened years ago, for many victims, the pain is still very fresh. The story of priests in a time of crisis is nothing new. It's even made its way onto the silver screen, courtesy of the master of suspense himself, Alfred Hitchcock. He was a Catholic, by the way. His 1953 film called I Confess is the story of a priest who has knowledge of a crime but is bound by the seal of confession not to reveal anything. Last night, the young adult group at St. Patrick's Cathedral held a screening and discussion about the film.
Tonight, we're showing an Alfred Hitchcock classic called I Confess. The movie is about a priest, a Roman Catholic priest, who heard the confession of a murderer.
As the film develops, evidence begins to point toward the priest that the priest may be the murderer. And of course, the priest is bound by the seal of confession, so he can't do anything at all that would in any way indicate that he knows who the murderer is. So it's quite dramatic.
I have killed Mr. Villette.
The movie we're watching this evening is a wonderful film, I think, because it's an example of what Pope John Paul II referred to as a fruitful alliance between art and the gospel. Mercy, forgiveness, sacrifice, unconditional love. We see all that in the main character. So the event this evening, I'm going to show the movie, and then after showing the movie, I'm going to point out a few of the recurring themes in the movie, and then open up the floor for a discussion.
So Father Logan, could have he gone to confession to another priest and telling him the confession that he heard?
He couldn't betray Keller in any way. As soon as exceptions start being made, the sanctity of this sacrament is compromised. It's part of the burden that priests carry as confessors.
So what are you going to do when they arrest you? Perhaps you will point your finger at me. Perhaps you will say it's Keller. That's what you will do, is it? You can't tell them as long as you are a priest. Can you?
The reason why we're showing this film is that it's important for us today because, you know, the Holy Father and the priesthood is under attack because of the sex abuse scandals that have come up in recent news.
The film as a film has tremendous respect for the priest, but within the film, there are a number of people who very quickly turn against the priest. So there's something like a crucifixion at the end of the film where the crowds are actually going to physically attack the priest because they think he did this. I'm sure there are many, many people today who are angry at priests because they hear these stories about sexual abuse. But I suspect, everything I know about it, most Catholics are able to distinguish between a small minority who did some terrible things and the vast majority of priests who I think most Catholics still view as very dedicated men giving their lives to serve God. So I don't think we can make a simple characterization of audiences today. But I really do believe this film would speak powerfully to people today.
Well, definitely a unique subject for a thriller there, and nobody does it quite like Alfred Hitchcock. Stay tuned, there's much more Currents coming up straight ahead. When we return, we'll have the day's headlines, including a Belgian bishop who resigns after admitting abuse. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later in the show, you know we've been talking this week about ecclesial movements. We'll introduce you to a member of one of them that could one day be a saint. But first, let's check out today's headlines. Pope Benedict today accepted the resignation of a Belgian bishop who admitted to sexually abusing a minor. Bishop Roger Joseph Van Haleu had been the Bishop of Bruges since 1984. In a statement, Van Haleu said he began abusing a boy from his immediate environment while he was still just a priest. He said the abuse continued until his early time as a bishop. The bishop said he has apologized and asked the boy and his family for forgiveness, and he now apologizes to all Catholics. Meantime, a German bishop has submitted his resignation to Pope Benedict after recent allegations he physically abused children. Augsburg Bishop Walter Mixa says he wants to step down to prevent any further damage to the church. Mixa is accused of hitting at least 6 children who resided at an orphanage where he was a priest in the 70s and 80s. Back here in the U.S., a man who says a Wisconsin priest sexually abused him decades ago has filed a lawsuit against the Pope and senior Vatican officials. The man, identified as John Doe 16 in the lawsuit, accuses church leaders of failing to protect children from Father Lawrence Murphy, a man the suit claims the Vatican knew could be a child molester. The Vatican dismissed the claim as being completely without merit today. An attorney for the Holy See says the Vatican knew nothing of Father Murphy's crimes until decades after the abuse occurred. And in Britain, the bishops of England and Wales are calling on Catholics to perform acts of penance to help atone for sexual abuse by priests. A statement will be read at all parishes this weekend, assuring the faithful that solid child protection measures are in place. But the statement also says it is time for deep prayer and reparation for atonement of the sins by abusive clergy. The bishops there are urging English and Welsh Catholics to make each Friday in May a special day of prayer. In other news, the Vatican will finance adult stem cell research at the University of Maryland. In an announcement today, church leaders said the Vatican would donate $2.7 million to research into the use of adult stem cells for the treatment of intestinal and other diseases. The Catholic Church is opposed to embryonic stem cell research because embryos are destroyed when the cells are collected. In 2007, Pope Benedict said adult stem cell research holds promise for scientific advancement while respecting human life. President Obama today joined the chorus of opposition to an Arizona immigration bill, calling the measure misguided.
Indeed, our failure to act responsibly at the federal level will only open the door to irresponsibility by others. And that includes, for example, the recent efforts in Arizona, which threaten to undermine basic notions of fairness that we cherish as Americans, as well as the trust between police and their communities that is so crucial to keeping us safe. In fact, I've instructed members of my administration to closely monitor the situation and examine the civil rights and other implications of this legislation. But if we continue to fail to act at a federal level, we will continue to see misguided efforts opening up around the country.
The president spoke there while giving remarks to a group of America's newest citizens at a naturalization ceremony for members of the U.S. Armed Forces. Other opponents of the law include all of Arizona's Catholic bishops and Los Angeles Archbishop Cardinal Roger Mahony. The bill has passed through both houses of the Arizona legislature, but the governor has not said if she will sign it into law. And finally, the iPad is all the rage these days. The new gadget from Apple is part laptop, part iPod, and part digital bookstore. One of the newest apps for the iPad could come in handy for expectant parents who want to track their baby's progress in the womb. We get details now from Rome Reports.
A new iPad application will help parents experience pregnancy in a new way. The Hello Baby application created by Pampers lets iPad users share exciting baby developments with friends and family, and it can be downloaded for free. Expecting mothers can enter their due date and track the baby's progress from week 4 right up to week 40. They can learn about important changes through audio clips, detailed images, and touchscreen buttons. Mothers can also hold the iPad in front of their stomach to see a life-size representation of the baby. The application lets them view close-ups of hands and feet. Users can also listen to what a heartbeat will sound like and can even tickle the baby's feet. Details such as the baby's due date, name, gender, size, and weight can be added to personalize the iPad. Now, wherever you go, you can share these precious moments with family and friends.
Technology. Stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. Just ahead, these groups go into the deep, and Bishop DiMarzio will talk about them.
They really are part of the church, and they have a great respect for the role of the bishop and for the priest, and they want encouragement.
Welcome back. This week we've been looking at ecclesial movements. They're unique lay organizations that will be gathering for a special mass at St. James Cathedral coming up this weekend. Well, tonight, Francesca Maxime heads into the deep with Bishop DiMarzio to explore some of these movements and their meaning for Brooklyn.
Bishop DiMarzio, thank you so much again for being here on Currents.
Good to be here again.
Well, today we're talking about ecclesial movements, and for those who don't know what they are, could you tell us, please?
Really, the new ecclesial movements really came about after the Second Vatican Council. As I said in a former program, the Second Vatican Council really gave us a better appreciation of the laity and their role in the church. There's always been, I think, an appreciation, but the Second Vatican Council really made it concrete. And from that, these new movements started to grow spontaneously. There wasn't like a plan to start them, but mostly they were almost all lay leaders, some with priests, began in various ways to take responsibility for the apostolate of the church as it was known 40 years ago.
Okay.
How were they going to move things along? And they've grown. And certainly our Holy Father Benedict XVI, as John Paul II, they saw this as an integral part of the life of the church, not something that you just are going to disappear, but they seem to be something that will stay with us well into the future because they've tapped an energy and a need that is very important.
And in that energy and need, how they tap that in the Brooklyn Diocese right here?
Well, we have a lot of different groups that are represented. In fact, I think next Saturday we have a day where they all come together, all the ecclesial movements at the cathedral. They have a day of prayer. And we see them all, and you really see they're all very different. One of the older one is the Cursillo movement, which is basically coming from Spain, and where it's Cursillo means a short course in Christianity, Cursillo de Cristianidad. So it's like a catechesis, and it's a weekend where people really get an intense experience of their faith, for men and women, and they have together, and then they have weekly meetings that help people live their faith. We have the neo-catechumenal movement. It's a little bit younger movement, which also was started in Spain. And this is a movement where, again, catechesis, new catechesis, bringing families together especially. They have their own brand of liturgy, which is approved by the church. And they are really into evangelizing. We have a group of the diocese now. We have 4 families from around the country that have come here to evangelize, and every Saturday morning they're down at Cadman Plaza, and they just meet people. They have 28 children, 4 families, and they dance, they play the guitar.
They're really active and really visual.
Those are just 2 of them, but there are many others, all from different ways, different charisms, different things. But what you see is lay activity.
Lay activity. And so you've sort of explained what was going to be my next question, which was how they've grown over the years. So then maybe I'll go into the next one, which is, what do you think the future is for them within the church?
Well, I think the future is very bright because they're tapping the lay involvement in the church, although we think somehow there's less involvement, but the involvement that there is much more intense, much more responsible, much more productive for the lay people that are taking their faith seriously, because they are taking responsibility for various things in the life of the church.
What specifically then has your role been, Bishop, with them?
Well, again, just meeting them, trying to work with them individually, being invited to the events that they have. They want to have the bishop there. They're not.
Well, of course,
yeah, but they're not separate from the church. They really are part of the church, and they have a great respect for the role of the bishop and for the priest, and they want encouragement. The charismatic movement is another one.
That's right.
They all wish that the bishop be there at particular times when they have their great big meetings. So to be present to them, really.
Yeah.
Sometimes they ask for guidance. They say, what can we do?
Right.
And they come and we talk about it. So it's a good relationship that we have, I think, with the new ecclesial movements.
And what, finally, is the purpose of the liturgy on Saturday?
Well, the liturgy on Saturday is specific to the neo-catechumenal movement. They usually celebrate the Mass on Saturday evening, and they have been given an indult, which means an exception in the Roman Rite, to have certain things different in the liturgy. One of the things is that they use unleavened bread, but that is baked by themselves. So it isn't just a little host, it's a whole baked unleavened loaf that they use. They also give the sign of peace right before the offertory. Like the scripture says, if you have bring your gift to the altar and you know you have something against your brother, leave it there and go be reconciled. So they follow that thing. But otherwise, they're minor things. But there are little things like that would be different. They're very much engaged. They would. One of the things specific to them is that they do prepare for the liturgy. For example, on a Wednesday night, they would get together and go over the scripture reading. So then one of the people in the group would, before the scripture reading is read, give a kind of a monition, it's called. They'll tell you, this is what you got to listen for.
Sure.
This is what I think it means. Well, it means a lot more. We should do that with everybody.
Right.
Because some of these readings, you get lost. I mean, they're just so complicated. Just give a little bit of 2 sentences. Say, this is what you're looking for.
We're all human.
So that would be positive. So that's one of the things.
Great. Well, Bishop DiMarzio, thanks so much for sharing all of that. We really appreciate it. And, of course, for being with us again on Currents.
Okay, great to be with you.
Bishop DiMarzio breaking it down for us. A reminder, though, the special Mass for those ecclesial movements will be taking place on Saturday afternoon at St. James Cathedral. And, of course, you can read Bishop DiMarzio's column called Putting Out into the Deep each week in the tablet. You can pick one up at your local parish in Brooklyn and Queens. Now, Natalia Ortiz has written more about these ecclesial movements over on our blog as well. Just go to currentsny.net and click on Riding the Way. Stay with us. We'll be right back. When we return, she lived just 18 years, but she'll soon be one step closer to sainthood. Finally tonight, you just heard Bishop DiMarzio talking about ecclesial movements. Well, one of the more than 24 groups that will be attending a special Mass for them tomorrow is the Focolare movement, which was founded in Italy after World War II. Recently, leaders of Focolare in Europe learned that one of their members, who died in her teens, will be beatified. We get a look at her life now from Rome Reports.
The Italian youth Chiara Luce Badano is an example for many youths and the sick despite her death at only 18 years of age. Her heroic way of facing cancer didn't just surprise her parents and her friends. On September 25th, she will be proclaimed blessed. Chiara was born in 1971. Her father was a truck driver and her mother a housewife. A sports fan, those who knew her described her as an open girl, concerned for others and very close to her parents. The three were members of the Focolare movement.
Her mother says Chiara and her would exchange small acts of kindness. They kept track by collecting pebbles in their pockets. In the end, Chiara always had more pebbles than her mother.
I've seen all the coherence and the profound Christian witness of Chiara in the life of her parents.
At age 9, she found the spirit of the Focolare movement in a festival celebrated in Rome. It caught the attention of the Badano family, which shared everything. From this moment, they joined the movement, and the young Chiara and the founder, Chiara Lubich, formed a great friendship, which is reflected in the letters they sent each other.
Chiara Luce is the name that Chiara Lubich would give her after the long correspondence they had since she was a child. She got this name in the last period of her life.
Chiara began to write letters addressed to Chiara Lubich with "Hi, Mom," which shows that for her she was like a mother. And Chiara came to know more profoundly about God through the movement founded by Chiara Lubich.
One day, the 17-year-old was playing when she felt a sharp pain in her back. After several tests, the doctors thought it was a problem with her spinal cord. It turned out to be a malignant tumor. When they diagnosed her, it was very advanced. She had 2 operations without success.
In the last moments, she refused morphine that could have lessened her physical pain because she entered into another logic, the one to offer everything. At one moment, she said, "The only thing left is a pain, and if I can't offer this, what can I offer?"
She got sick when she was a teenager and died while she was young, but she tried to live through the difficulties always with a smile, trying to be a loving presence for everyone else.
Benedict XVI has recognized as a miracle through Chiara Luce's intercession the extraordinary cure of an Italian boy with a grave illness. Now the 18-year-old girl will be raised to the altar on September 25th.
Wow, remarkable and inspiring life there, cut tragically short. And if you're wondering, by the way, focolare means hearth, a place for comfort and warmth and family. Well, that's it for tonight. Now, as we've mentioned, we'll have coverage of the Mass for the ecclesial movements coming up on Monday. But meantime, remember, we're always online. CurrentsNY.net is the place where you go. You can also follow us on Twitter and become our fan on Facebook as well. Until next time, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great night and a great weekend.